Yo, what's going on, believers? Happy Monday, and let's just get right into a weekly market outlook. So, as far as the economic calendar for the week is concerned, my attention is mostly focused on CPI here in the US, which will be released to the public Wednesday, September 13th, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. So, I'm expecting a lot of volatility to enter the market with this data coming out. Following that Thursday unemployment claims and PPI, and then not really anything special on Friday, but just keeping in mind the next federal funds rate, right? The interest rate decision here in the U.S. The next decision is next week, September 20th. So just keeping that in mind as well. We are 1 week ahead of a new interest rate decision, as well as having both consumer and producer inflation related data released to the public this week. Now getting into the charts. So as far as the weekly is concerned for dollar, my super simple approach is directing me to see this high, or is directing me to stalk an opportunity, right, to see this high being ran, which is the high from last week. This week has already started. So what you're seeing here is like what's happened so far this week. But my interest, right, as far as where I want to see the weekly candle for this week reach to, in regard to last week's candle, I want to see the high reach to. Now, so far, it's completely moving the opposite direction of that high. But I do have to keep in mind that with most candles, right, the anatomy of it, there's the opening price, there's a high or a low, right? And then there is the low or a high, and then there's the closing price. So just like how this candle, for example, has this large tail on the bottom, this was a down close candle at some point as it was down here. This was a green bodied candle and it was looking like this. But because these candles aren't complete until the full week is done, right? So from the time it opens Sunday to the time it closes Friday afternoon, it requires that whole time to pass before a weekly candle can officially close. So by the time this candle actually closed, though, all of that downward movement had been met with upward movement before it closed, and ended up closing a little bit above the opening price for a bullish close, which for me are my black candles. So that's still not off the table, right? For it to be making a potential tail lower and then snapping higher and actually reaching this high. Now, when it gets there, I'm not saying what I want it to do there, right? I'm not concerned about that. But what I do know is that if there's any sort of momentum running up to this high, regardless of if it gets to it, if it gets through it or not, and making that upward movement here in the assets that I like to track, right, the U.S. stock indices and some forex pairs, it should make it easier for them to move lower. It's not always the case, right, 100% of the time, but more times than not, that's exactly how it plays out. At least from my experience, right? It's not financial advice. All I am is a belief advisor. I advise you to get you some belief, especially some belief in self, okay? But so that's, like I said, from the weekly perspective, what I'm looking for, right? So now I'll drop to the daily. Let's see what I'm looking for from the daily, right? So from the daily, was really also looking for a run of this high, right? This is that weekly high. So if I'm just strictly just mentioning from the daily, really this high was where my interest was. But because of the fact that that previous week's high was just the day before, and on the daily chart there's also a daily swing high here, and because this had already dropped down but lower previous day is low and rejected this high upon close, right? Just to keep it simple, I didn't want to have this high and this high annotated. I felt like it'd be a waste of time. So this area here, right, as long as price makes some sort of effort to reach towards that direction, right, things that are inversely correlated with the dollar should have an easy time moving lower while dollar is making that run higher. Keeping it simple, right? Now, what I can see here though is inefficiency here that it had dropped into today, right, or yesterday technically. So drop down into here could definitely act as support here the following day. So this is Monday's candle, so Tuesday's candle could even potentially come run this low, and if it doesn't commit below that low and make an effort to get to the low end of this, right, because it's the body of the candle still respecting the 50% of this range. So that next candle, which is Tuesday's trading, right, could run this low and then spring higher and make that rally here. But if it doesn't, right, get back above this zone here, this range here, this blue box here, then I'm definitely going to be looking forward to tap into this alert that I have set, which is actually the low of this candle, which is from last week, Monday. So that's dollar, right? Go back to the weekly, and I'll drop down to S&P. So as far as S&P is concerned, this area here with the dashed line, just show you that's from the monthly, the midpoint of this wick here on the monthly, right? So just going to keep that in mind. We've already dropped down into this inefficiency here last month and rejected. So now this midpoint of this wick is my focus. And so that's what the area there is. Can't really see it because of that area, but the draw for this week for E-mini S&P and the other indices, well actually with NASDAQ and E-mini S&P, is last week's low. That's where I'm looking forward to get to. So there's a lot of news and stuff like that on the table, right? CPI, PPI, and then even bleeding into next week with the interest rate decision. So I could see a scenario where price runs this low here, which also, right, the confluence is that's the midpoint of that monthly tail, right? So it could run down here. If it doesn't commit below here with momentum and it snaps back above that range, could definitely see some sort of a bullish rally begin from there that does, right, come and take out this high and maybe even reach eventually, right, to these highs after that. So as far as the weekly is concerned, it's not moving in that direction quite yet, but in similar fashion, right, like with the dollar. Just because it's not moving that way just yet, I have to keep in mind that all of these candles here, these are weekly candles, they all have, right, wicks and tails, meaning that it was going one way and then it rejected, right? So this candle open, was moving lower, but then it rejected back above the opening price, created this high, right, rejected off the high and closed here. So the bodies of the candles are going to tell me the story. The wicks do a lot of damage. Okay, shout out to ICT. But so just keeping that in mind, right? Not going to completely throw out my original idea of my best entry for a buy being down here if I'm looking for buys, right? On like a higher time frame situation, for example, I'd be very interested in this low being ran first and then getting in, because number one, I get a lower entry, right? And then number two is it puts me in a higher time frame level entry as opposed to getting in anywhere around here with the week just starting, right? Yesterday, getting in anywhere around here, I'm in the middle of a previous weekly candle. So I'm not in at the high of it. I'm not in at the low. Potentially could have been in around the close, right, if I get in at the open of this one. But I want to be in at a higher time frame reference point, ideally for a longer term, type of move. And this is no man's land to me. So I 100% prefer, right, for it to run this low so I can get in down here, right? That puts me in at a monthly level and a weekly level, or for it to make an effort to just, right, get above these highs and then establish support up here, indicating that until it breaks back down to that support, is most likely going to continue up to these highs. So those are the type of scenarios I'd be more willing to wait for to make me feel a little bit better about the probability of my setup playing out in my favor. So now I'm dropping down to the daily, and then we can get up out of here. right? So on the daily, these are the same levels, right, that I showed from the weekly. Just add in this daily inefficiency right here that price has, since it created, right, tapped into, rejected, but now dug into here, closed above the halfway point of it. So as far as now, my next, right, daily area I'm looking for is this high here. So I'm just simply looking for the high from yesterday to be taken out. And so again, what does that mean, right? Well, what that simply means is that I would like to see for this price to be revisited, 45.43. And when price revisits this area here, I'm not hardcore about, oh, I want to buy it or oh, I want to sell it. What I want to do when price gets here is I want to drop down to a lower time frame, and I want to start to stock order flow. I want to get a sign, depending on, right, the time of day it is, right, what session it is, and how that lower time frame is being delivered, right. I want to see clues of it either, right, being bullish or bearish. And so once I get that lower time frame order flow established, then from this level, now I have essentially the beginning of some sort of buy program or sell program, right? And if I can identify it correctly, then I'll be in a situation where I can kind of like walk the market like a dog on a leash into its next higher time frame area, right? Because as you can see, so this is isolated right here. As far as this was yesterday's candle, and now today has opened up, it's inside of that candle, right? So if I'm looking for the high of yesterday's candle and I am granted, right, price reaching that level again, right, revisiting that level, then like I said, I'm gonna be able to dog walk it to the next high time frame level. So what would be an example of a next high time frame level, right? So as far as this time frame here is concerned, the daily, right, then the high of this daily candle right here would be the next area. So in between the high of yesterday and this high from last week, let me put my magnet back on. Damn, that's crazy. Without the magnet, this stuff is not on point. So that's not even the area right there. So it's actually 43.50. This magnet makes a huge difference. It like actually snaps the object that I'm drawing to the open, high, low, or close of the candle that is nearest to. So when I did mark this the first time, it was close, but it was not at the actual high of this candle. So I realized that because I'm a little OCD, but I realized that when this was not anchored to the high, I could see it was like a little bit of space in between where I put it, right, and it was a little bit of a little stab above that, and that didn't look right to me. So I was able to spot that. But so back to what I was saying. So from here on the lower time frame, right, I could potentially be scalping from there up to this level, right, while also just keeping in mind that I don't have to fully close any of those transactions, because what could happen here is it gets above this high, it may want to keep stretching higher, right? Just like how here, for example, right, once price got below this low here, and then look, it made another low here. So it may be sometimes situations like that where price has somewhere to go, and you may get an extra candle or two in that direction depending on the time frame, right? This being a daily time frame, a break above here could potentially end up being another 2 days, right, of bullish candles here stretching higher. And so if I'm able to secure an entry around here, and there's another, 2 candles are going to print going upward, then just maintaining that original entry makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because I won't have to do any more work for the profit on that position to increase, because price is already in a situation where it's posed, or it's poised, there we go, poised to move higher already. So yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna keep it there, because I mean I like explaining stuff, to be honest. I like kind of sharing my perspective about things. I just feel like if I have something that can be useful to someone else and I hold it to myself, that does like neither me nor them any good. So I'm a big fan of right finding and sharing useful information. But on that note, shout out to the believers, shout out to the dreamers, shout out to the homies that inspire me to be better each and every day. I love you, I appreciate you more than you know. I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.